What you're about to see is a segment of a workshop I put on for 100 brands in our program. And the thread that I want you to keep in mind as you watch the video is that the effective value of AI has more to do with you than the tool itself. Enjoy. Now let's get into the frustrating problem with AI as it pertains to copywriting. And the problem with AI is that it's a dichotomy. It produces both entry-level junk that would barely pass in a high school marketing class, and it also gives you components of marketing and copywriting that can drive $1 million a month campaign. It is simultaneously an overconfident first day on the job intern, while also a multi-million-dollar strategic advisor at the same time, sitting in your pocket right now. And that is a frustrating part because it can be brilliant, it can be embarrassing, and sometimes it's both in the same output. So the question becomes, how do you actually use it in a way that's useful without drowning in the slop that's useless? And the answer, in my experience, is that if you know what you're looking for, if you understand what good looks like, and we're going to talk about how you do that in a little bit, AI becomes a serious leverage tool. But if you don't, you just get paragraphs of noise and can't tell what to keep and what to delete, because it's a bit like asking AI to write code. If you are a programmer, AI becomes a $300,000 a year collaborator with you at all times on demand. You know what's working, you know what's broken, you know what to tweak. But if you've never seen a line of code before and it's intimidating, the output that it spits out means nothing to you. It's in a language that makes no sense at all. You don't even know if it's dangerous and open to security risks, which is a real thing. Same with your marketing. AI can hand you 60 lines of content and copy in under 30 seconds, but maybe 4 of them are actually worth keeping. And having an eye for the 4 lines that are worth keeping is the role that you're responsible for these days. Because to me, you don't need to be a quote unquote marketer anymore. It's better to think about yourself as a miner. Right? And what I have here is Don Draper done up wearing his Mad Men outfit. But really, the real job of the marketer these days is being a miner, a gold miner, digging for the right thing and knowing when you see the right thing. A good miner knows what to dig for. A great one knows when they struck gold. That's where the leverage lives now. Not in typing yourself, because AI can do a bunch of that for you. And it's not about necessarily being smart, but it's in tuning the outputs that you're given by both the dumbest and smartest technology in history, which is AI. Let's move on to the fastest way to create effective copy. And for me, in my perspective, in my experience, having learned it myself, practiced it myself, and also trained other people to write copy, the fastest way that I've seen it is doing it like you're learning a new language. You immerse yourself in it. If I want to learn Spanish, I'm going to somewhere like Panama to hang out for a month. You don't really have to memorize rules. You don't have to study a dictionary in a room on your own. You don't have to overthink sentence structure. You surround yourself with the vocabulary and the rhythm of the language until it starts to feel natural. Copy is the same. The fastest way to get better isn't necessarily to only read books or only take notes. It's to feel it in your veins because you are being exposed to it every single day, all day long. When a headline grabs you, right? It could be a news headline, or it could be a Facebook post headline that leads you to another page. When a product description makes you nod and say, hey, I want to learn more about this thing, or I think I'm going to buy it. Or when an email makes you want to scroll just a little bit more to see what they're talking about. This is where your brain can be getting fluent in good copy, especially the stuff that compels you. So for me, the recommendation that I have for you is 30 days of immersion, reading, analyzing, saving, and paying attention to the stuff that's in front of you that you're already stumbling across or that you intentionally seek out, which we'll talk about the tactics of shortly. This can do more than what most other people do in 10 years. You start to feel what's good. You start to hear when the tone is right. And you start to recognize when something's quietly persuasive and masterful. You don't need fancy inputs. You can just scroll your feed. You can bookmark great ads in Notion, which I'll show you a demo of later. You can save emails you actually open. You can study the landing pages that made you convert. Once you soak enough of it in, you stop trying to remember what good copy is and you start to just recognize it instantly. That's what happens when you sharpen your taste. That's what sharpens your taste that you can use to create high converting material together with AI. Next one up is the simplicity of using AI for copywriting. So I love well-structured, robust prompts that are strategically crafted. You know, Alfred and I, we do that in order to build out agents and automations. But like most things in our lives, there's a time and place for everything. And for copywriting with AI, you don't necessarily need well-structured prompts. You can get very far with what I call exploratory prompts. And these prompts, they are deceivingly simple and trivial, yet that's what makes them effective because you can move fast and you can mine for what you're looking for quickly, like you're digging for gold, as we talked about earlier. This works well when you pair it with your daily habit of immersion, because once you're immersed, you'll know what to look for and what direction to steer the ship with when it comes to working with AI. And I'm bringing this up right now because I really want to focus for you right now for this version and this part of the series of the workshop to keep things as simple as possible. Because the two main things that you want to do is immerse yourself in the copy and then analyze the copy. Because naturally from that, you are going to come up with your own ideas for how you're going to apply what you've analyzed and what you've learned from seeing stuff in the wild and putting it to use with your own copy. And this is a little bit of a preface for us talking about the tactics later on when we talk about using AI to both analyze copy, which can lead to the writing that you do. Why most copy falls flat. So there's two, and I'll say three. There's a bonus third reason down below for why copy falls flat, even with the help of AI. And I see this with brands that we work with all the time. The first reason is that you just frankly don't know your market well enough. This is pretty common with dropshippers. And the second reason is that you know your market so well that you trivialize high converting ideas. You just throw them in the garbage without even realizing it. So let's elaborate on reason number one first. So Meta has made it easy for everyone to make sales without having to be good at marketing. The algorithm is that good. We see it all the time with brands using boring product photos that like have no copy on it that scale to 5-figure days. If you don't know your market well enough, you can't come up with high contrast, high converting messaging because the foundation of being able to say something to a consumer that captures their attention is to say something that interrupts the pattern that they're used to. But you can really only do that if you know what the current pattern is. For example, for people who are trying low-fat diets, right? Because that's been popular in the 90s and 2000s, but you can't lose weight doing that past a certain point. And then they hear someone come along and say, eating fat doesn't make you fat. And then they talk about the keto diet. That is a pattern interrupt that works really well. That is effective copywriting. That is an effective big idea because they meet them where they're at with breaking a belief in an honest, true way. They are interrupting the pattern because they know what the current pattern is. They know the market. If you don't know your market, or even if you do, what I suggest is that you can spend time consuming content in it for 7 days. And it doesn't take that long to become immersed, especially in the world that we're in now, where most of us are consuming way more content than we were built for. But the availability is there. So what I would do, and this is what I actually do tactically, is I find 10 YouTube videos related to your market and problem. You put those videos on play one by one. And then very quickly, within like the next hour, YouTube is going to start recommending you a bunch of content in your feed that is relevant to that topic. And very quickly, through the consumption of that suggested content, you are going to learn the patterns, the vocabulary, the beliefs, the problems, the things that you should be knowing, almost like at the back of your hand as a marketer in your space. Reason number 2 is on the other side of it, where you have the curse of knowledge. So Claude Hopkins, the now famous copywriter who wrote Scientific Advertising, built his career by addressing this issue of the curse of knowledge. In the early 1900s, he was hired by the beer brand Schlitz Beer. They were a mid-tier brand at the time, and they would say things in their ads like pure, refreshing, quality ingredients. And Hopkins, instead, when he was hired as a copywriter, didn't start from a blank page. Instead, he toured the brewery. He watched, he listened, and he asked questions. And he saw things that other people skipped. He saw 4,000-foot artesian wells, bottles that were steam cleaned 4 times, filtered air to cool the beer, lab testing imported hops, cultured yeast. And then he asked why none of this had ever been mentioned in their ads. And the guys that he was working for said, every brewer does this. So he nods and says, well, no one else is saying it. And then it became the campaign. And what ended up happening was they went from number 5 in the country to tied for number 1 in sales. Not because, again, the product didn't change here. It's the story that did. And what's valuable here is that when you know a market really well, you don't have to continue to be Einstein. You don't have to continue to be on the cutting edge of that industry because you're already on the fringe. What you can embrace instead is being more like Sherlock and checking for the little details and being your own detective on what it is that you might not be saying that you are currently trivializing, or stuff that everybody else is not saying that you think should be said. A lot of the stuff that ends up being great copy that can convert well is stuff that's buried in the process. It's in a throwaway comment. It's in a line that you almost deleted. So taking a look at these things that you're trivializing and even your own knowledge on your industry is what can lead to $1 million campaigns. And then the third bonus reason for why things fall flat is simply just not having a sensitive eye for what good copy looks like yet. And I'm emphasizing yet here. Even though you've been exposed to it all your life and you continue being exposed to it in this day and age through content that we consume, you just may not have been analyzing it deeply. It's like going to the Apple store many, many times throughout your life and not paying attention and even realizing the very intentional decision design that's gone in to how they merchandise the store, everything inside the store, to drive consumers to purchase. You can experience it, right? Going to the Apple store and content without realizing what's going on. And so this is your call to action to say, or rather to embrace, I'm going to have a dual experience path here with what I'm consuming. I'm going to consume it as a consumer that I normally do. And then I'm also going to consume it as an analyst and see the strategy that's behind the content that is being placed in front of you. All right, let's get tactical. So immersion is the name of the game right now because immersion can naturally lead to creation. A big part of the process for a lot of copywriters, myself included, is less about starting from a blank page, but it often involves seeing what other people are doing, not necessarily in the same industry, but seeing and getting inspired by how other people are writing their copy, making their ads, structuring their messaging, and then using that as a foundation to spark the ideas that we want to use in what we're building. So immersion will allow you to both be in the environment, to be exposed to what good looks like, while also forming the foundation for what you use as your raw material for making your own copy.